Welcome back to
Pardon Our Honesty,
where today's deep dive is perception versus reality.
Ooh, it's going to be a good one.
Because I say my perception is my reality, so don't be trying to change my mind.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that could be wrong.
Yeah. So they say your perception is your reality.
Yes.
But I think the question that makes me kind of consider that is, but is your perception or your reality correct? And do we take an opportunity to explore that, or do we stick with it?
I think it depends. One, it depends on, are you willing to evaluate your perception or what you perceive to be reality as this could be wrong? And are you willing to explore, okay, what could be wrong about this? Or if you have a set or strict mindset, like I know there's a term for it, I can't think of it right now, where fixed mindset, where whatever your perception is, that is your reality. I don't care what anybody else says. This is what I believe, and you can't change my mind.
Yeah. And see, I think that applies across the board for multiple scenarios. So one, I could meet you today, and maybe I caught you on a bad day, and I was like, man, Tiffany is a bitch. Like, she was rude to me. She was whatever. And that's going to be my reality unless I am willing to, let's say, evaluate to make sure that was correct. So, people say your first impression is the lasting impression. Yeah. But I feel like, man, that kind of sucks because sometimes I don't always give the best first impression, especially if you catch me at the wrong time. And then other times it's like in relationships even, like if I look at our relationship and I think you're doing something wrong, my perception is you're doing it wrong. And that's my reality is you're doing it wrong. And to that person, they might think it's like,
no, this is the way that's been working for me because I tried all those other different ways and it didn't work.
But how do you, I guess, like, what does he say? Like the river's divided or, you're divided because you're so set. Let's just say we have a mutual friend, right? And you're so set that your perception of her is just awful. And my perception of her is like, wow, she's great. I don't know why you get that. How do you bridge the gap? Is that what I'm trying to say? To where you are open to see my perception and I'm open to see your perception and say, what is the true reality? Or is there not such a thing?
I think it's willingness. It all is going to be based on your willingness to give space to see if what you perceive that moment in time, because perception is that moment in time, whatever is going on, right? So are you willing to give space to allow, okay, well, maybe this next moment in time will show me that what I felt was my perception and I made my reality. That's not true,
Because I think it happens with kids a lot too. Yeah. Their perception is, you're mean or you don't allow us to have any fun, or maybe
you've never been in any life experiences. You ain't been through this.
Right. Or their perception is they have no rules and you're just letting them live their life. When really you're like, I have rules. So, that perception versus reality, I don't know that you can really change it. Unless, like you said, unless you sat down with somebody and was like, this is, that's not reality. And they're like, yeah, it's my reality. So how do you, I feel like I can see that in so many things. Like if you look at your life in general, how many friends do you view and think one thing of them, your reality of them based on the perception, and then find out that that's not accurate? Your own relationship, you probably perceive things as reality and I do, but they see it completely opposite. And then your children, your coworkers, like if you have a disagreement with somebody at work, their perception, their reality was you did this, but your reality was completely the opposite.
Well, I definitely know what that feels like. It's my last job that I have. The perception was she's an angry Black girl who's just so upset with whatever life has given her that she is projecting that onto us. And that was really hard to change because once one of them got that in their mind, then it spread like wildfire and that's what everybody believed. So it didn't matter whether or not I tried to do things that would bring team bonding into the fold or whatever I did to try to say, hey, yes, I'm mean, but this is the reason why. And look, I'm doing this nice thing for you. It never changed.
Yeah, I mean, I just had an incident at work not that long ago, and it's like the perception versus reality was so like their reality, their perception was 100% opposite of what mine is. But what I noticed is that neither one of us
was willing,
has taken the time or willing to discuss it to say, I understand what you're saying, but this was my reality. This was my perception. And them saying, well, this is mine. And then you respect each other's opinion and say, okay, we both read that wrong or we misunderstood it wrong. Let's move on. But that doesn't typically happen.
No, because I think we allow our emotions, which aren't true. Your emotions can lie to you quite often, to get in the way of, okay, I had this disagreement or I had this challenge. Let me get past, I'm pissed off because you suck and you having a bad day and you just took it out on me, and say, okay, tomorrow or maybe 3 days from now, I'm going to go back to Megan and I'm going to talk to her. Hey, you remember that day this happened? I felt like this. Did you really mean it like that? People just, do we even talk to each other anymore?
Not really.
Or even on a text.
Well, I'll say and to be honest, is that I can be a grudge holder. Like sometimes I'm like, I'm just going to, like if I feel like my perception is I didn't do anything wrong and you came at me, you need to figure that out and you need to come to me and you need to talk. Well, then in reality, they're probably thinking the same thing. But then on the flip side with perception, people really do put out certain things though. Like, if every day I was posting $500 bills and a new Rolex and things like that, even if it wasn't my reality, I'm making people believe that. So
that's not reality. That's just you.
It's perception though. So I'm making you create that reality based on what I'm putting out there. So like for me, I feel like social media is the root of all evil because people like, oh my gosh, they put everything out there to paint a picture that's not always accurate.
That's true.
Like you see these people and you're like, oh my gosh, they're so happy and they're so in love. And then you run into them in the store and they're like, I effing hate him. I want him. And I'm like, well, damn, on your Facebook, y'all look like, you know what I mean? So like, do they want a false reality? Do people use social media as a false reality?
Absolutely, because I'm living my best life. I want everybody to see my best life. I don't want you to see the shit that I go through.
But why not? Because I feel like if you posted some crappy stuff one day, I'll probably be like, girl, I feel you. Girl.
Because
I feel the same way. Like,
I just don't think people
don't want the negative.
Vulnerable and, like you say, get the negative or put real life out there because somebody's going to judge me.
Yeah.
So,
well, because like I know on our podcast, like we give a lot of advice and we suggest a lot of things, and you get some people say, well, you don't do that. And it's like,
and
are we making it look like it's our reality, or are we saying these are things we recommend and you're making it seem like we are making it our reality?
Yeah, because we would definitely be honest and say, no, we don't have it all together. I can promise you I do not have it all together. My family, sometimes I feel like it's a whole hot mess. My mindset can be a whole hot mess. I'm doing too many things at once and trying to make it all work. And then when it goes to hell, I'm like, oh my Jesus, please somebody save me.
But I also think too, like perception versus reality is, I feel like, I don't know how to like correctly word this, but I feel like some people want to create that false perception or false reality and make you somebody you're not. So let's just, for instance, say I use the wrong cultural term, or I use a derogatory comment, not necessarily on race, but maybe somebody's mental status, and I say it in a loose conversation, whatever. You use it out of context. You shouldn't. You know that it comes out, whatever. I think people find that. You can see it every day if you turn on the news, if you turn on TV, and they find that one thing, or they'll dig back 20 years to when you were in like 8th grade and had no education about it, whatever it is, whether it's money, race, whatever. And they now have perceived you and made the reality that you are this one person based on this one moment.
And one moment in time.
One moment in time. And they don't let go of that.
No.
How do you overcome that? Because we've all said and done dumb shit.
I don't know that you can overcome it. You just have to be okay with forgiving yourself and not letting that one moment in time somebody judged you because you made this rash, dumb decision define who you are. So like you're saying, just because I walk into a room and everybody's like, oh, that's that bitch Tiffany coming in here. She thinks she better than everybody. Oh, I can't stand her. If I allow that to be who I
Your reality.
My reality, then I'm going to continue that whole drama queen girl. Yes, I am that bitch. But if I have the awareness and you also have the willingness to say, she comes off like that, well, let me get to know her. Let me just give her an opportunity to show me who she really is. Then that could change your perception. That's just Tiffany. She's just crazy loud.
Yeah.
Wants to be seen sometimes, but she is really a cool person. But without that openness and willingness to give me space to show you who I really am, you may never know who I am.
And I think that that's like, I was thinking about today when we were talking about, different topics for the podcast, is that it's applying to so many things because perception, you can pull into a neighborhood and have a perception that the reality is everybody is loaded or happy or whatever. Mm-hmm. You can go to an event and because one person says the wrong, like people, I've heard of instances, you heard about this last week where somebody's going through your old Facebook and finding one thing you might have said wrong. And then they're like, oh, like you did this or you had this person in your photo or you did this one time. So this is who you are. Mm-hmm. How do people, I almost feel like it's a stereotype almost. How do we get over that and say, like you said, like there's people I haven't liked, but my friends have liked them. So I'm like, let me give them the opportunity. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I have been very surprised that like, wow, I would have missed out on this relationship or this opportunity to learn something or this opportunity to be exposed to something because my perception wasn't anything to do with it.
I think it is like you're saying a stereotype because a lot of the friends that I have will tell me some things that even you and I have done together. They're like, well, culturally, we don't do that. Well, that's your perception. It's not my perception. I'm willing to try anything once. And as long as I don't die, I'm all good,
Yeah.
But I think you have to be willing to allow people to show you who they are.
But I think exactly what you just said, though, like when they said, culturally, we don't do those things. Perception versus reality. Mm-hmm. Perception is our culture doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. Reality is there's a lot of people who do that. We're just trying to carry over this thing that doesn't need to be carried over. Yeah. And instead of embracing and saying, how did you like it? Or should I try it? It's more of like, why are you doing that? So, that's, I guess, and like, I'm not a perfect person. I judge people sometimes the first time I meet them. I'm like, not for me. Or I go into scenarios and I'm like instantly uncomfortable. My perception is I'm not going to enjoy myself. I'm not going to like it. And I make that my reality. Yeah. To where I'm checked out, ready to go. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thinking like, how do you overcome that? Because it's just like, I would hate for anybody to judge me on one instance, like one comment, one meeting, one anything.
Well, I think it's not up to us. We can just be our authentic selves.
Yes. But how do you change it? Doing you, like when you go somewhere and you make this perception, that's your reality, which you don't know if it's true or not. You've already made it.
I tell myself, give it a chance. Like
they're coming to get you.
I know, right?
The sirens are coming.
Excuse us.
We'll be back.
It always freaks me out though when I hear the sirens because we had a fire at the house, and so I'm like, oh shoot, is it burning up over there? But if I've made a perception and I've said, okay, this is the reality. Unless it's my gut saying, nah, this feeling is absolutely, positively, authentic, or is something here you need to just tread lightly, then I'm going to give people the opportunity to show me who they are.
Yeah.
And I think that came from me meeting all different types of people, all walks of life throughout my life. I was a very open, honest person, and until you betrayed me, I'm that kind of person that I'm open. I will love on you. I will give you everything. But once you betray me, you're dead to me. So even though my perception may be, I don't know about you, I'm gonna give you an opportunity to show me your true colors, and then after that, if your true colors don't jive with mine, then we gotta split ties.
Well, and I think another thing too with perception and reality is, let's say I had a perception or reality that I, whatever, culturally or ethnically, or your house, I don't want to go to your house, I don't like where you live, any of that. Like, when do we take the opportunity to actually learn and say, okay, let me, somebody educate me and let me be listened to hear it. Like, what were we talking about the other day? I think me and you were having a discussion about something. I can't remember.
You and I had a good discussion at our girls' day. And there were some topics that for me, I've been very closed-minded about. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to hear it. We're not discussing it. But hearing you guys talk about it and it being a safe space to where nobody was judging, nobody was like, oh my gosh, you don't do this or that.
And nobody was recording.
Yes, nobody was recording.
Cameras.
It really helped me broaden my thoughts about the topic we were discussing, because it made it feel like, okay, I'm normal and there are other ways to explore some of the things I'm like, oh, heck, it ain't never happening. Gave me different ways to explore that. So I think if you are open, and it is going to also depend on the people you're around.
Yeah.
Are they safe? Because if I found out that we talked about those topics and so-and-so was telling so-and-so over here and over there, then you're going to be dead to me, because my perception was this is a safe space. I can express myself. I can be raw and real, and you're not going to judge me. You're going to give me positive feedbacks, but that's based on who we have around us.
Right.
And that's the kind of group that we have. Other places, I probably would have been in the corner like, they talking about that. Ooh, I'm not going to touch that with
I agree. Me too. I agree. Yeah.
So.
And I think some people seek conflict or seek shaking it up or seek wanting to find that make their perception reality in the negative way. Yeah. And I don't really know there's a way to overcome that until that person has that same attitude that you're saying, like, that's just not how it is. I want to overcome it. But I think the challenge I've been a lot to myself lately is that, one, for me personally, is like back off the control of things, and like what I can control, I control. Somebody else in the room is a power person and they want to control it. I need to learn to like let that go. And then I'm trying not to judge immediately, because I am a quick judge. I walk in, if I'm not comfortable, I'm checked out. If I meet somebody, my perception is she's snobby or he's arrogant, and that's what I'll make my reality. And I'll be like, I don't need to talk to them. Let me go talk to the person I know. Yeah. And in that, I could be losing a lot of opportunities to connect and meet. And I think, like you said too, like overcoming stereotypes. Like if I see somebody that I think is completely opposite of me, that's probably the first person I should walk up to. You know what I mean? And be like, hey, just to see, what is why did I make this my reality that we wouldn't get along? Like, but
it could be past experiences. Sometimes we enter a space, and based on what that space is like, what's going on at the time, we use our past experience to kind of judge, okay, the last time this was like this happened and it went bad. And so that's going to put me on edge. But I just think if you I don't know, I'm just kind of a happy-go-lucky, crazy person that's just...
But I think, too, though, like, okay...
Open not to any and everything.
But not to go down the race thing. But we were talking last week when we were in Arizona. And I wasn't there yet, but y'all were at this place, and you went across this room, right, where there was wrestling. And it was all what's my culture? White people? Can I say that? Caucasian. I don't want. Somebody's going to be offended by the wrong. See, it's one of those things. I'm going to use the wrong term, and somebody's going to be like, "Oh my gosh!"
You just forgive me. I didn't mean to say that.
So you and Ed were the only African Americans in the room. Mm-hmm. So they only walk up to you and ask you if you had tickets.
Yeah.
Okay, not the whole group that you were with. So my immediate perception and reality is that they're racist. They're prejudiced. They chose you because you're African American. You were a target because you stood out different than everybody. And my perception immediately, if I was there, my reality, my perception would have been like, what the fuck? And probably lost my shit, right?
Yeah.
But is that really what it was? Or is that what we perceive it is because that's what we look at. We tend to go towards that and I'm not saying it doesn't happen because we know it happens. I'm not even being ignorant saying it doesn't happen. It does totally happen. Yeah. To me, that's exactly what it sounds like when there's a group of you at that time and you're the only ones that they went up to. Because I believe there were 2 other couples that were in there with you before you even got in there. Weren't they in there first?
They were in there.
Because I know we were running late, but they were in there.
Yeah, they were in there.
And then you went in there and then they said something to y'all.
Yeah, but we weren't all together. So we kind of stood off to the side and the other group of friends were all together. And for me, I think honestly, in my perception, I just figured, okay, we stood out. He probably didn't see us or anyone that looked like us in there to watch the wrestling that gave a ticket. So that's why he came over and kind of asked.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't necessarily take it as racism.
I would have, though.
I guess I could have.
I would have, because I would have been like, why her, not the other 6 people? But we do that a lot.
But our reality is, okay, that happens.
It does happen.
So it's like, this
So when do you, right, though, but I think race is a perfect one to say, when is it true reality? And when is it our perception? And how do we know the difference? Is that something, if you were to ask him, hey, did you pick us out just because we're Black? He'd probably be like, no, you didn't have a ticket. He's not going to be like,
I think it would have to be, for it to be reality, it's going to be blatant. There's no question about whether it was racism or not.
Yeah.
If you following me in the store because I'm Black, but there's 10 other people that came in the store and you're not following them and you didn't give them a second thought, my perception is going to be, you must have had an experience where some other people that look like me stole stuff. And so that's why your reality is, I need to follow her.
Right.
But is that really racism? I don't know. It could be.
I mean, yeah. I think it's because they were watching this show called The Rookie. It's a police show. And this whole season was about them profiling in lower income, poor communities. And they're profiling, whether it was African American, Hispanic, or whatever they were at. There was a skinhead neighborhood. And no matter what was going on, they were always targeting them and trying to arrest them and trying whatever. And that's what started making me think about perception versus reality. Our perception is that's a dangerous person, or our perception is reality is he could have been selling Girl Scout cookies in the wrong part of town. And now you're, so how do we, that's a major thing.
Yeah, that's a major thing because they are trained to look for these very specific characteristics that say, hey, if they're demonstrating this type of behavior, then they are likely this, or that. So I think in that profession, I mean, you do need to use your better judgment, but how can you discount your training?
Right.
I don't know. I just feel like if you are in a law enforcement position or position of authority, then there should be some serious questions. While yes, my perception says you are this, and this. Okay, but
what's the reality?
Yeah. Do my follow-up questions and believing my perception is right match up with, okay, yeah, you're really this thing, and so that is the reality.
Well, just like with teachers, I feel like they get a lot of students in their room. Their perception might be one thing of a kid based on what he looks like, but they could be a genius, or they could be abused at home, or they could be, there's so many things. So I think it's something to be aware of, and I would challenge, anybody who listens to us, that when we have these conversations, they go about their day and they take a minute to think, is this reality or my perception? Yeah. Even though we all are told your perception is your reality, and we know that. We're the same way. We agree with that. Our perceptions are reality. But when do we check ourselves and say, is this really reality, or is this me in my head?
Yeah. Yeah. And then that fixed mindset is humongous. So if you aren't willing to be open and to look at yourself honestly, then you probably aren't going to change your perceptions that you've made reality.
Well, because like sometimes I'm super stubborn. Like the thing that happened at work a couple weeks ago, or if I have a conflict with somebody, or even me and Nick, like I'm so stubborn. I'm like, nope, that's like my reality is right. That is what happened. That's my perception. And they can literally explain it to their freaking blue in the face that is not how they perceived it. That's not how they interpret it. It's not how they saw it. And their reality is completely different than mine. And so I think that's where it comes down to, who is this person in my life? Because if you're going to be somebody in my life, I should be able to say, Tiffany, this is how I saw it. This is what I thought. And you should be able to say whatever. And we kind of understand each other's misunderstandings, basically. Yeah. But when it's a complete stranger, it's very hard to do that because we make a split set, and then we're just on our way.
Yeah. I was going to say, too, that sometimes we talked about experiences and how they kind of dictate how you come to perceptions and realities. I will say, as a kid, I didn't like the disagreements and the arguments and the loud. So I think for me, the ability to change and be that chameleon, to be like, okay, I thought that was my perception, but let me switch it, because if I switch it and make that my reality, now everything will go back to calm. So I think, sometimes, like I said, your experiences can play a big part in how you view the world and what becomes your reality, but it's okay to change that.
I think so too. Like you saying that, like if you have been or witnessed abuse or cheating or anything like that, when you see a sign in your head, a sign of somebody, your perception is reality, that person's doing it, or that person is this or this and it may not be that, but you, like you said, your experiences create that perception, which was your reality. And so I think it's very challenging, especially in this day and age with social media. People take photos of everything, they screen record, you post on social, that you are constantly under a microscope. And if I feel like grace is something that has to be given sometimes, because it may be ignorant, or it might be rude, or it might have offended you, but to group that person, especially if it's not an everyday occurrence, I feel like it just sucks, because you might be losing a really good opportunity with somebody, or an opportunity for work, or an opportunity for a friend or boyfriend or husband or whatever. Yeah. And just because of one moment.
Yeah. But I think it's also good, like you said, either you talk to that person or you talk to somebody that's going to check you and say, hey girl, now I know you said this was what happened in that situation, but did you really think about this?
You're really good at that. I think we're really good. I think our group is kind of either we're all in and like, yeah, that's stupid, blah, blah, blah. Or we're like, okay, really? Do you really think that was what they meant? Like, come on.
I've been told that I give the best advice, but I don't always take it. Or I always have my sister always tells me this, you always look on the bright side. Well, for me, if I don't look on the bright side, then it's a pretty dark, gloomy place that I might end up. So I think, like you're saying, in your perception and reality, I'm always trying to pick the best thing.
Right.
Just pick the best thing and
focus on that.
Yeah. Pick the best thing. So I definitely recommend people check your reality. If you can't do it with yourself or with that person, then ask your friends.
Well, and I'd also say probably pay attention, because if you're constantly not liking someone or something all the time, maybe it's you and not your reality. Maybe it's maybe I'm just...
Macaroni and cheese gonna have to forgive me, because I'm never gonna think that's good. I'm sorry.
I love me some macaroni and cheese. Especially macaroni and cheese bites. Oh, we're gonna get into food again. We always end up talking about food. You don't like half the good food. You don't like sweets. You don't like meat. Yep. You eat bread and vegetables.
But that's why you love me, so.
And that's reality.
Yes.
That is not my perception. That is reality.
That girl does not eat half of the stuff people would be like, oh my God, you love that. No. Well, guys, this has been pardon our honesty.
I feel
Talking
was
about,
I like laying back? Like,
I don't know, but that's okay. We're all right.
it's so funny when I watch our videos back sometimes, our podcasts, and I watch my facial expressions while you're talking. Sometimes I'm like, mouth open, watching you. I'm like, why am I doing that?
Oh, Lord. Of course it's going to have fun taking out these bloopers.
It's not a blooper. This is reality. This
is reality.
Perception is it would be perfect. Reality is it takes us 14 minutes to set up the video.
I did really good this time, guys. I did really good. Well,
perception.
Hey, that is my perception. And it was the reality, I think. What I'm
We
trying to say.
switched seats. We changed lighting. We opened the blinds.
But
Okay.
we did it just
But
for
we
you
did
guys.
it. We did.
So, because we are, your perception of us is that they have it all put together.
Yes.
But
You
the
love us.
reality is sometimes we don't. And we want you to explore your perceptions and make sure they actually fit into the reality mode. Give us 5 stars because that is your reality about us. Thank
Yes.
you very kindly. 5 stars helps our algorithm. It helps people to see us and
Share
it, like it,
subscribe, whatever else
especially
you
if
do.
you're on Spotify. We also have a YouTube channel, email, or Facebook. And we're going to be live
Yes, Sunday.
on Sunday. So
That's
y'all
the
get
9th.
ready.
Yes, we will. Oh,
And we might not
Wait,
be
this is-
even recording for then. And so
Yeah.
that is our reality. We just messed that up. But we love you guys anyway. And until next time, bye.